Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode of Overbooked here on the channel. This is the series where I talk about every single book on my shelves because I'm a shark. Today we're talking about N.D. Stevenson's Nimona. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Quick disclaimers before we start. I bought this book myself. Nobody's paying me to talk about books and all opinions are my own. I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as humanly possible. If you do want to go in knowing absolutely nothing, pause the video, come back when you've read it, we'll talk then. And I will link the story graph for the book in the description below in case you want to check out any user-generated content warnings. N.D. Stevenson is an author known for Nimona, their graphic novel, and also a whole bunch of other things, including She-Ra, The Princesses of Power, a fantastic animated series. If you've not already seen it, highly recommend. That's a huge recommendation from me, but we're not here to talk about that. In mid-2012, this started to be released as a webcomic. I didn't encounter it until the graphic novel was produced in 2015 or so. There's also meant to be a film coming out later this year. I think it's going to be on Netflix, not 100% sure. There's been some faff with the film generally, but if you are a huge fan of Nimona, there may be a film coming for you in the future. I'm going to read you the blurb. That'll be easier. Nimona is an impulsive young shapeshifter with a knack for villainy. Lord Ballister Blackheart is a villain with a vendetta. As sidekick and supervillain, Nimona and Lord Blackheart are about to wreak some serious havoc. Their mission? Prove to the kingdom that Sir Ambrosius Goldenloin and his buddies at the Institution of Law Enforcement and Heroics aren't the heroes everyone thinks they are. Nemeses, dragons, science, symbolism. All these and more await in this brilliantly subversive, sharply irreverent epic. There we go. I don't know because... Should we maybe go... Is that going to be too low down? Oh, it's fine. Framing is hard. I don't know how true to the webcomic this was, how much they adapted it. If you are a person who knows that, feel free to sound off down in the comments, because I've only ever read this in graphic novel format. So I will say no idea if it's a true one-to-one of what was released online or if they did more to it. Pro number one, reasons you should read this. One of the reasons I love graphic novels is for the art. I really enjoy looking at them. They please my eyes. I think the art in Nimona is just really lovely to look at. The colour palettes are fantastic. The art style is really cool. It does a lot with a little. It's not overly simplified, so you just feel like you're not looking at anything, nor is it overly complicated, so you feel like you never finish it because you could always be looking at more. I really enjoyed it. Will you focus on this? I don't know because I can't see the lens because I'm holding it, so it can't see my face. That's a page. There you go. So yes, really lovely to look at, a very interesting book. I liked being able to see how clearly this is something that was released over a long period of time, because there are some changes in some of the character design things that do have a reason. They're not just arbitrarily changing them, but you can definitely get the sense that this was something that was written over a longer period of time than someone who just sat down and made a graphic novel. Neither is a good or bad approach, I just think it's interesting. This series manages to balance a really interesting tone I think we've seen in some of N.D. Stevenson's other works, is that very humorous, sort of tongue-in-cheek attitude alongside some very serious themes. It's balanced impeccably well. It never feels like one is being consumed by the other. There are some really difficult themes in this. There's some really tragic things that have happened to some of these characters. However, the way that they often cope with that is a humorous, slightly snarky attitude, and I think that works very well. Almost self-aware as a world, where you do have this very villainous villain and heroic hero, but it has that almost superhero quality of we are in combat with each other because that is our role that we have to play. Kind of Megamind-esque almost. Will this have predated Megamind? I don't know. I think it's a very funny graphic novel while still keeping to some very serious ideas that really hit close to home. I would recommend it for the tone as well. I also think this is a graphic novel that a lot of different people who read different things could enjoy, both in terms of genre, because while it is a fantasy, it has that humour in it. I think it's making commentary on story in a way that's interesting for people who are just interested in story and so forth, but also I think different age ranges could get a lot out of it. I wouldn't say it's uniquely a graphic novel for younger people nor for just adults. I suspect there's some things that would go over kids' heads and there's some things that maybe adults don't appreciate in the same way as kids would, but I think it would be an interesting thing to have read maybe as kind of like a middle grade into a young adult reader is probably where I would have started enjoying this or started appreciating this for what it is. I think it really hits an interesting place in terms of catering to a number of different genres and also to a number of different age ranges in terms of its audience. And again, looking forward to She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, for example, it does have that universal appeal, which I think is really interesting. However, I've said interesting too many times, I'm sorry. I kind of need to find a thesaurus. However, graphic novels aren't for everyone. I know some people who really don't get on with them. I will say, I feel like they're having a big thing in my friendship group this year, in our bookish circles. A lot of people are really getting into graphic novels. I don't know if it's because we're all tired, and we just want something nice to look at, but that is how it is. I have reviewed one other set of graphic novels this year, and that was Lore Olympus. But obviously, if graphic novels aren't something you get on with, I don't know that you're going to enjoy this. I do know that there is an audiobook, which I'd be interested to listen to, whether it feels completely different, whether you just get the story, whether the story without the art is a completely different reading experience. I might have to check that out at some point, but as yet I have not done so. I was trying to think of other books, because my graphic novel reading is fairly limited, that explore that idea of villainy and possibly try and have a similar sense of humour to villainous characters. One I've been thinking about recently was the Greta Helsing series, which is not necessarily a book about villainy, but perhaps a book about looking at monsters in a different light, which I think is possibly something that we can see similar themes of. Sorry, it's down here and I keep pointing up here. Of Nimona. And the other obvious one is, I think, Marissa Mayer's superhero series, which I do have a review for and I'll link if I remember. That one, again, looks at the two sides to the story, and especially a world where you have people very clearly penned as heroes and villains. Likewise, another superhero one is the Dreadnought series. That's just a really fascinating look at superheroes, supervillains, all of that stuff. I think it's interesting that a lot of the fantasy books I read aren't picking apart villainy in that exact same way, and I think it's quite telling to me that this book feels much more like a superhero book in a fantasy world than anything else. I just thought that was a cool tidbit. That's not me saying that there aren't fantasy books that explore villainy, it's just not quite the same vibe. Should you read this? My attitude is yes, I think you should. I actually reread it despite not having planned to for this Overbooked series, and I had a really good time doing so. It didn't take me long, because graphic novels never take too long, and I just thought it was a really interesting story. I hadn't appreciated how much was in it, so I would say it's one that warrants a couple of rereads perhaps, but I like that for a graphic novel, because if you're anything like me, you buy them, you read them once, and they sit on your shelf for 2 years until you make yourself a YouTube series where you have to read everything again. Just me? That might be a unique situation. Have you read Nimona? Do you have plans to? Have you read N.D. Stevenson's other work, Lumberjanes? I would love to hear from you if so, because I would like to read them as well. Have you got any other graphic novel recommendations? Plonk those in your comment as well. While you're down there, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also follow me on social media. Come hang out on Discord, where we have chill chats about books. I would like to say a huge thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to videos, bonus content, live streams and more. If you'd like to check that out and join their number, that's linked in the description as well. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. We're also meant to, apparently, and clearly I am...